So basically today I want to talk about when a figure called Saidi can be considered noisy and when a figure called noisy can be considered Saidi when doing chart reading, not when doing chart interpretation. When doing chart interpretation, what I mean by chart interpretation, in when you are doing chart interpretation is like this. Let me give an example. Let's say you want to do a calculation for maybe you want to answer a query, you want to answer a question. It could be any question. So now they now ask you that well, you should add a particular house with another house or this or that with that is what we call chart. Then the result it then give you, they determine the answers. That's what we call what chart interpretation. So, but when you look at the word chart interpretation and chart reading, literally they mean the same thing. Had it been there is a better words to qualify this, I could have used it. You understand? But in Arabic geometry, we call it kewu, kewu kati. It's like I've combined my local language with Arabic language because kewu is not my language, but that's not where I'm going. But what I'm saying in English, when you say interpretation and reading, they similar, they almost mean the same thing. When you go to maybe English meaning or whatever meaning, to almost give you the same thing. But that is something closer that I could have used to qualify the adjective I could have used to explain this particular aspect I want to explain. But that is not the right word. If I go down to my own to the real language, do you understand? But that is what we can find or represent it with. You understand by hand? But basically, just to for you to understand, we have what we call chart interpretation and chart reading. Most of what we do when we are doing, even in Eastern or Arabic geometry, is what we call chart interpretation. We are interpret and tukati, which in Yoruba you call it tutukati. But there's what we call kewukati. So chart interpretation and chart reading is like tutukati and kewukati. You understand? But that is not because we are so the best way you can understand it from English language is to say well chart interpretation and chart reading. So now back to what I was the purpose of this the purpose of this discussion is to explain when to know when if because in geometry we have 16 primary figures. We have 16 primary figures, and some of them are Naisi, some of them are Saidi. What we mean by Naisi is when we talk about Naisi, we are talking about favorable. Sorry, we are talking about unfavorable figure. And when we talk about Saidi, we are talking about favorable figure. And because we already know what a favorable figure is and what a non-favorable figure is already generally. So it means that anytime we see them, we call them favorable. Anytime the one that is favorable, we call it favorable. Anytime we see the one that is not favorable, we call it what? Unfavorable figure. But there are cases whereby a figure is there as unfavorable figure because that is a figure that can talk about that particular thing you want to talk about. Yet you call it unfavorable, whereas it is favorable. Let me give you an example. Let's say, let me give you an example. Let me use African understanding or African setting to explain this example I want to give you. Let's say you are giving let's say maybe somebody is sick. Let's say somebody is sick. No, they will ask the person to go to pharmacy. I mean, I'm not even using African setting. I'm using general setting now. Let's say somebody is sick and now ask the person to go to pharmacy to buy drugs. When the person goes to the pharmacy to buy drugs, the person will use the drug and everything will be fine. Do you understand? And the person, everything will be fine. Now, that drug that was used. Do you know what that thing is made up of? It may be roots, it may be leaves, it could be all those things. It could be root, it could be leaf, it could be plant, or so many things. Medical people will be able to explain that one better. That thing that was used, it was taken. If that thing is infected, is bad. The medical practitioner will have done something that will neutralize the negative effect, harmful effect that could have been attached to it. So it is when those negative effect has been removed, then they will now turn it to drugs. But if they show you the process to which they are remove that negative effect, all those things, you may not be able to eat it. If they show you the process to which they do it, you will be feeling reluctant to do it. But if they do it, everything behind you, everything was done, they now give you this the medicine, you will be able to use it. Which means that some things are in a particular stage before it turns to the desirable stage. Some things are on in undesirable stage before it turns to a desirable stage. Because if it's in that undesirable stage, if they say they want to sell it for you, you will not buy it. They will now repackage it, rebrand it to a desirable stage. You will then buy it. Do you understand? And that is exactly the case of what I want to talk about here. That well, sometimes you are seeing a figure, it is Saidi, whereas it is not Saidi, it is Naisi. Do you understand? Because, or let me use another practical example. Let's say you buy a car, and that car is, maybe it is an accident car. You know, these accident cars, you are seeing it. If you are not the one that want to buy it, you feel like, oh, this is a bad car, I don't want it, blah blah blah, like that. You run away from it, you will not purchase it because it's an accident car. But if somebody that knows the value of this accident car, it could be saying millions in it. That if I should buy this accident car, I can go and sell it to another country, whereby by the time I rebrand it, I repackage it, they will buy it fine and will make millions. But you are seen as a bad because you don't know how to sell it, you don't know how to view it, you don't know much about it. But people that usually buy accident car, they will buy it and they will make it good out of it. That is what we are talking about. How to know that this figure you are seeing, it's not a Said. You should not see that Said you. Because somebody that is seeing an accident car, if the person is being taught or the person is being tutored that this accident car, if you buy this small money, if you go and you can resell it at bigger money, you make more profit. That person will not call that thing that is calling that car that is calling noisy car, that is that car that is calling bad car. You will not call it bad car again. You will then call it good car. You will then spend money on it. I hope you have been able to get the point I'm trying to make emphasis on that. Well, not every Saidi figure you see on the table, on the geometry table, that is Said, in that is Naisi. Not every Saidi figure you see on the geometry table that is Saidi, and not every Naisi figure that you see on the geometric table that is Naisi. In other words, not every favorable figure you see on the geometric chart that is truly favorable, and not all the unfavorable figure you see on a geometric chart that is truly unfavorable. I hope I'm able to explain that to a better understanding. So how do you then know that this figure you are seeing, it is a Saidi figure or if it's a Naisi figure? Don't forget, this principle apply mostly in chart reading. You understand? But at least for your own understanding. So now how do you know if a figure should be considered Saidi or Naisi? Although for chart, apart from chart reading, to depend on your level of understanding, it can also be used for chart interpretation as well. That this thing is Saidi, you never call it Saidi. That is what usually happen in a case whereby a figure is, when they ask you to add two or more figures together, and the figure will then give you Saidi. Sorry, the figure will then give you Naisi, but they will not tell you that you should use Naisi. They will tell you, maybe they ask to use if it is Munkolibu or Dahil. So if they ask that, well, if it is Dahil, it is good thing. That Dahil may give you that Dahil. For instance, not start when people say if it is Dahil figure, it is good. It doesn't concern maybe it is a favorable or not. So that is the case of what is happening there, but that is not where we are going. I'm just trying to I'm trying to make you understand why even a figure that is Naisi, even in chart interpretation, can also be considered Saidi. There are cases like that, but don't let us go to. So now back to the major talk I'm saying that, well, how do we know when a figure is Saidi that we should not call it Saidi, we should call it Naisi? How do we know when a figure is Naisi that we should not call it Naisi, we should rather call it Saidi? It is as simple. Figure in house 1 determines that. So when a figure repeats in another house, when a figure in house 1, that same figure that repeats in another house, it means that case that we are talking about has happened. Taking for instance, let's say figure in house 1, let me see where like that. Let's say this figure now, it appear now, it repeats in where it repeats in house 7. It means that this, because this one is nice figure. Umura, this is Umura figure. This is Rubos. This is Rubos figure. This is Umura figure. So this thing is a nice automatically when you see the nice figure. But because it has gone to house 1, you will not call this thing one. You will not call it Naisi. You will call it Saidi. You call it Saidi. It is as simple as that, without even deviating too much or saying too much. That's the end of the whole discussion. without even so, but it has to do with how the figure in house one. So it is the figure in house one that can tell us that, well, maybe a figure should be considered Saidi or Naisi or blah blah blah. So, and where it is when the figure in house one repeat, that means the case will then be seen. If it is, because this one is Naisi, we'll call it what Saidi. Because this one, if it is Naisi, it will be considered what Saidi. Now, that is what it means. That is how to know. Then how do we then interpret the case? What I've explained is how to know when to call a Saidi. Now, in this case, the interpretation of this one, I don't know what the question is, because this one is not a real chart, because a chart should have a miss. I didn't check if this chart has a miss or not. I just cast it, not for maybe it has miss or not. I just cast this chart for this discussion purpose, not for anything. So it might have a miss or not. So now, what would the interpretation of this would then be that, well, if let's say the person is asking about relationship, I just use an example. Let's use that one as an example. So that let's say this person is asking about relation. It means that, well, I said that when it repeats in house one, it means that, well, if it is Saidi, you call it Naisi. If it is Naisi, you call it what Saidi. Now it means that, well, in the beginning, the relationship of the let's say the question is, no, this one is just a random chat. Let's say it's about relationship. It means that in the beginning, the relationship will be good. In the beginning, the relationship will be good, but later on, it will be bad. Do you understand the simple? That is if it is about relationship. You understand? But it means that, well, in the beginning the relationship will be good, but later on it will be bad. They said maybe the person is aware that the relationship will be good, later on it will be bad. The person is now doing everything possible in order not for it not to be bad. That's what could save the person. That is the advantage of divination. Divination have already stated what it is clearly, that, well, in the beginning the relationship will be good, but later on it will be bad. But the later on that will be bad, it may no longer be very, very bad if the querent doesn't want it to be bad, because you already know that it is good, later on is bad, and he's not doing things that could avoid it to lead to bad relationship. You understand? So it means that, well, every person take cautions and they take precautions, everything. But what if the person is not aware of the information? Then maybe the thing will later be very, very bad. You understand? But I hope I've been able to explain this to a clear understanding. This will help Querent to understand that, oh, if he cherishes the relationship, he doesn't want the relationship to be bad, then he has some work to do. You understand? But just like giving an information that could help your Querent. So I hope I've been able to explain this to a much better understanding. So if there's any question, don't forget, I've told you that, but this one, that's when to, I've explained how to know when it should be considered, and I've tell you the basic, the simplest interpretation to it, and I've also told you the advantage of it. The advantage is that, well, it will help the querent to prepare if he value the relationship. This is not only for this, it could be for anything. I just use the relationship as an example, because this particular chart is not casted for any purpose. I just cast it for this particular discussion sake. So which means I did not check if it has miss or not, or I just cast it. So may God be with you. Thank you for listening from beginning to the end. May God be with you. Subscribe to my YouTube videos, and may God bless you as you like, comment, or share my video. Thank you very much. May your life never be useless as you like, comment, or share my video. Thank you.